How well does a +0 Forma do against the most wailed out Far Saviors in the entire game? We're going to find out. Let's talk about where Volke ranks, why, and what skills you should look for depending on the mode you're interested in. Do you need a cheap nuke to fill roles in Aether Raids and Summoner Duels? Volke is here. This man's weapon is deceptively simple. It has a lot of key effects that synergize well in the current meta. With Null Guard and Special Acceleration, it means you're going to get lethality off on the second hit. The problem is surviving long enough to proc this very powerful special. Most Far Saviors are utilizing Hardy Fighter that gets procced on the first hit. That means a second hit with your special is ideal in most cases. We'll talk about when that's not the case because there's a very notable exception. This unit needs to be paired with Catria, but keep in mind, most units do to take on the ever-growing bulk of the Far Saviors right now. It's why Catria's value goes up every time the Savior power level does. So you'll want to use this unit in Summoner Duels and on Aether Raids defense. He will show up for you though. In SDS, it means you can move around your high-powered nukes to other teams. On defense, it means you can make sure your second nuke can take out Brave Dimitri, the true enemy. Before we get started, who is your main nuke right now? Let me know in the comments. Aether Raid simulations are tricky, so I've erred on the side of caution here. What you're looking at is the top Far Saviors for the mode with Summoner support, triple Mythic Blessed, +10 merged, and an Omni +6 visible buff. Most of the units you're going to face are not this decked out, but we're testing limits and see where Volke's strength lies. These kits are taken from things that I've seen as well as people that I've talked to. You'll get a lot of variance as you play though. Let's talk about what needs to happen and why I've chosen Volke's kit. I know I'm gonna get some eye rolls here, but listen, most of his killing power doesn't come from his attack stat. He's going up against incredibly beefy units that reduce his already minimal damage by 50%, in some cases from Aegis, and more than that when additional damage reduction is present. Volke's job is to survive. Most teams, when they're enemy phasing, are going to try to get debuffs on the opposing team in whichever stat gives them the most benefit. I've run into this a ton because I run Attack Defense Unity on Duo Chrom. Even if you think you're not debuffing the enemy team, you probably are. Did you just dance with Plumeria? Yeah, you just debuffed somebody. Player face strats will try to avoid this, but Volke isn't here to stop those. He's not that unit. This all leads me to the very bizarre Defense Res Unity. He's just trying to survive long enough to proc lethality. Trust me, most of these first hits land for a whopping 0. If you're going for max investment, it's a different story, and we'll talk about what that build should be. For the folks out here who can't afford a +10 Volke and need a cheap contributor, this is a very sneaky A skill. Let's talk about some of the traditional Far Saviors. Volke levels greens. Fjorm and Brave Edelgard get smashed. This makes sense because lethality is hitting where Edelgard would normally get the damage reduction. For Fjorm, the trick has always been hitting twice. Whether that's from a Brave weapon, Catria's triangle attack, or just outspeeding her. On a side note, Fjorm is a very similar unit to Rearmed Robin, but that's a different topic. The Brave Hector and Athun results are nice. What I want to highlight here is how close the Athun matchup is though. If he procs lethality, this isn't an issue, but look at the matchup. 5 HP is way closer than I like to be for something like this. The real issue is there are many Athun builds. All she needs is to get a little attack stacking and the result flips, especially with color advantage. That being said, I think this is very conservative. You're more likely to face a +10 Brave Hector, and Volke has an easier time with him because she takes him down in 2 hits as opposed to Athun taking 4. A similar thing can be said about Mufasa, but I'm less worried about this matchup because of how many +10s there are in the world. The answer is not many. Don't forget, making a defense is playing the odds. If you start to have a problem with Volke surviving, you can defense stack with drives. It doesn't take a lot. The truly interesting result though is Duo Duma. Keep in mind, he has the cooldown reduction on the enemy unit before they attack. It throws Volke's rhythm off a bit. There are ways you can compensate for that. With what I'm showing, lethality is a 2 cooldown. When you consider Null Guard and Special Acceleration, there's no difference in the other matchups when you add an Infantry Pulse, and it means lethality procs on the second hit for Duma as well. It's just tough sometimes to get Infantry Pulse working properly, and you're losing some opportunity cost. Dimitri is Dimitri. This is not the unit to take him down. Get somebody else. You'll notice that I haven't talked once about Elamine. I completely ignore her. Here's the logic. I can't control who brings her and how well they use her. I can't get a team with enough stopping power without a Catria Ball. This means I can focus on problems that I can control. I have a very successful anima defense that rarely takes losses, by the way. But let's talk about another mode. Let's make something clear. This is a Summoner Duels S unit. The unit doesn't really belong in Summoner Duels R. Your SDR units have to perform more than one function, and Volke is a nuke, pure and simple. SDS, on the other hand, has a much wider range of teams and use cases with a meta that isn't as stale. The logic here is very similar. He has to survive. He's getting the same Catria support, and since you can't rely on debuffs in Summoner Duels, I'm giving him +6 res. Yes, the res is important, but it also activates defense res ideal. Say it with me. Volke's job is to survive. I think these results are more impressive than Aether Raids if I'm being honest though. This is a whole range of Far Saviors. I know this is with triangle attack, but even with that, there are very few nukes that can take out this wide a range of units. Let's look over the losses though. Kill is obvious. This unit is designed to stop lethality and she does it well. For Fallen Rhea, this one is probably my fault. Instead of the standard build, I gave her Sacred Cowl. It procs on the second hit and stops Volke's lethality. It's what I run on her, but you're not going to see a lot of it in the wild, and also, you're not going to see a lot of Fallen Rheas in the wild. The Halloween Myrrh matchup is closer than I'd like to be with 5 HP left, but I can only highlight so many matchups. Duo Duma has the same issue we talked about earlier, but it's harder to get the timing right in Summoner Duels. You probably just want a different unit to take him on. For Dimitri, I don't know. Go get a Legendary Byleth. Actually, yes, get a Legendary Byleth, ditch Null Follow-Up in Volke's B skill, and throw a Lull or Special Spiral on there. You will love the results. Since there are fewer moving parts, I find Sims in Summoner Duels to be fairly accurate. I have had to add a few things though. If you want the unit to work at +0, you really need to use Mangoes to boost his attack. And you also need summoner support. I know this can be tough, but look at the results. I was really happy with these. The thing about them is, even if you flip to deflect missile, lethality negates it. It's really nice. I want to go over one more thing, and that's a max invested kit. Look at these results. The Volke users that I've talked to have said that this is the best lethality user in the game, and it's tough to argue with. You're gonna see something really pop out here, and that's the shift from bulk stacking to speed stacking. If you're going all out, you already have the bulk built in. That means you have a lot more room to play with. Just look at that bulk. By stacking speed and attack, you really push the limits of what this unit can do. You'll also notice that I've added some form of external null follow-up. This isn't strictly necessary, but lets you have fun with the B slot. Speed Preempt is very sneaky on a unit that hits this hard. The matchups are almost pristine. You notice he takes out Mufasa without having to quad. He still can't take out Dimitri though. Dimitri is a blaze that this fireman just cannot handle. What I really want to talk about here is the logic with the budget builds. The heart of this game isn't really turn-based strategy. It's a resource management game in disguise. By using a Forma and some well-placed skills, you can postpone using your orbs on a nuke until something you really want pops up. If Volke is your favorite, it's tough to complain about these results. If not, this is an excellent role player at +0 that will really take you far. Here's the thing about Volke. Other than his A skill, his kit is perfect for him. What you're looking for is skills that are either fun or could possibly be useful later. Most of those will be pure gambles, but we can take some educated guesses. The constant here is Ruptured Sky. It's just a premium option that is nice to have. For the Summoner Duels build, Harsh Command has gained a lot of value recently. It's not as much for debuffs, but debuffing effects. Removing gravity, for instance, can be extremely valuable. Lull attack defense can be used if an external source of null follow-up is present, and Pulse Smoke is just so valuable in that mode. If Askra is present or you can give him Infantry Pulse, you free up that C skill. You can see though it's very team dependent. Splashy Bucket is here because it looks fun, and speed-based true damage is nice. The Aether Raids build centers around that Unity skill, and depending on where you want to use him will dictate which skill you focus on. If you're asking me which one you should lean towards, it's Unity. I think we'll see more debuffs in Summoner Duels going forward. We talked about Special Spiral a bit, but it can be incredibly powerful to spam lethality. That sentence scares me to death, by the way. Colorless Feud can be valuable and negates the damage reduction from Elamine and Flame. It also helps versus rearmed Robin and Mufasa. Caltrop Dagger is one of my favorites simply because there are so many dominant calves. The Hardy Bearing effect can also be valuable. If you're absolutely crazy about Volk, this last build is for you. Kitty Paddle is just a flex, to be honest, but it's such a funny weapon. We talked about his attack speed ideal and speed preempt. At high levels of investment, they're just so good. Attack speed Oath 4 can make some crazy movement shenanigans happen, in addition to making sure the ideal skill is active. If you're asking me which one I'll be going for, it's the Aether Raids build, but I'll probably grab Speed Preempt 3. It's not as practical, but it's just so much fun. Let's head back to the rankings. Ranged nukes are dominated by duo and harmonic units more than any other archetype. It's rare that you find units that can compete at this level in the regular pool, and Volk is one of those. Keep in mind, this is meant to rank new units. All 4 of these tiers are very good. I personally have an Ascendant Joshua that puts in a ton of work for me on Aether Raid's defense. Volk is a better Ascendant Joshua, and on par with Legendary Alm, who edges him out because of the sweep effect. That chance to get a Volk Forma is an excellent opportunity, but the folks who should take advantage of this are the ones that either need an all-purpose nuke for the Catria balls on Aether Raid's defense, or need an additional nuke in SDR. He'll put in a lot of work for you, and it's unlikely that being a special spammer will go out of style. Look at OG Sonya as an example. All her preference weapon does is give her additional cooldown, and she's still an excellent unit. If you're looking for additional thoughts on the meta and where it's headed, I highly recommend my last meta report. Take care and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon.